Welcome back. All right, today we're going to talk about the performance hierarchy. Quick review of Move, Fight, Recover. It's basically a simplified version of the four coactive model. We got our physical, psychological, technical, and tactical, making sure we're getting a baseline of health. Also, review of the performance 80% solutions. So keep those in mind as we're going through this. All right, so first portion of Move, Fight, Recover is move to a position of dominance. Move well and often. So our strategy here is we want to start with joint mobility, which moves into mobility. I differentiate those two. This is just kind of my personal, I don't know, some people refer to it different ways, but I refer to mobility as the ability to get into positions that you would need. So the joint mobility is kind of the foundation of that. If you can move the joint, then you can get yourself into the position you actually need, which then should lead to movement. And movement, we're talking about movement skills. We're talking about the crawling, the jiu-jitsu stuff, kind of all this kind of movement stuff before we actually get into the skill sets. A lot of variety of movement stuff. Locomotion with the peak at sprinting. So every human should be able to sprint at some level if you are going to perform. If you cannot sprint, somewhere down the chain, something is broken. And we need to fix that so that we can get you to perform. So that's why this is the performance hierarchy. Again, if you are not able to sprint, this is where we need to get you back into the fight. And we do have a video on the gunfighter performance formula where we talk about getting back in the fight. Once you've got that locomotion to the point where you can sprint effectively without injury consistently, then we start moving into skill sets. Can you move into a position prior to your opponent being able to exploit it? So that's kind of what we're looking at. So again, moving to a position of dominance through that skill set, using that locomotion, the movement, the mobility, joint mobility. All right, next portion of Move, Fight, Recover is fight aggressively alongside your friends when possible. Strategy, so we're looking at gym skills, which will then eventually develop psychological skills into technical skills, which then lead into tactical skills. This performance hierarchy I've kind of modified off of Alan Cosgrove's fat loss hierarchy. Same concept, just a little bit different on how we're going to approach it because this is performance instead of fat loss. Same as his hierarchy, nutrition and health is first. You've got to have all that stuff in line. You got to be sleeping right. You got to be able to manage everything. You got to be managing your nutrition, make sure you're healthy, getting your vitamin D. You've got good A1C. You've got good glucose metrics. All these internal things are important. They will apply, maybe not right away, but at some point during your career, they will slow you down if they're not optimized. All right, so our next portion. So what should we do first in the week if we've only got 1 to 2 hours per week and that is all we've got? You need to focus on competition. That is your focus. Now, whether that is going back to the 80% solution with doing a team sport, or it is doing a jiu-jitsu practice, and being able to spar, or you're actually competing in whatever that sport was, a softball tournament or whatever. Those should be your priority every week. On the tactical side, we're looking at making sure you're doing maybe it's a shooting competition, maybe it's a force on force exercise, etc. So we really want competition. 1 to 2 hours per week is what we're shooting for. Next level, if you have 4 to 5 hours per week, we got that competition for the first 1 to 2. Now we're looking at skill training and practice. So now we're looking at not just playing a game of softball, but actually practicing the skill sets required, or practicing your jiu-jitsu skills before you go to that tournament, or practicing your dry fire practice, etc. So this is going to be if you have 4 to 5 hours per week. And this is probably most people, that's where they're at. Guess what? All that gym stuff that you thought was important, you got to get the other stuff in there also. If you're doing things such as sprinting, which we talked about earlier, chances are your lower body and your nervous system are already primed. So you're getting a lot of it right there. Your upper body strength may or may not be an issue depending on what your skill training is. If it's jiu-jitsu, you may not have a problem with upper body strength and endurance, etc. But if you do have more than 5 hours per week, up to 9 hours per week, we're looking at high volume strength training. So this is where we're starting to hit some actual like gym stuff. This is typically what most people focus on, but as a performance, when you are looking to perform, this is actually not the number one thing. First, we want to focus on that nutrition and health. Then we want to compete. Then we want to do our practice and skill training. And then we want to get into the strength training. If you have more than 9 hours per week, now we look at high intensity conditioning. And this is probably only going to be about an hour per week just because it's so high intensity. You just have to manage that. So as you're doing these things, look at your biometrics, look at your HRV, look at all these things that are going to tell you if you're starting to overtrain, because this is a lot of volume. Now, this is not to say that's not possible. You look at, I believe it was the cross-country skiers, at the Olympic level, some of those guys are getting 30 some hours per week of just basically working, aerobic conditioning type of stuff where it's mixed. It's not just their cross country skiing. Now they're doing other things. So if they're getting in 33 hours per week and they're only training 5 days a week, you can tell that's a lot. So the point at the end of the day is that just because you have a lot of hours of work in does not necessarily mean you're going to overtrain, but you do have to build up to it. So your first couple months might just be doing nothing but competition. Next, 3 to 6 months might be focusing on skill training and practice. And then after that, maybe you're getting to strength training. Maybe then you're getting to conditioning. And some of these are going to kind of ebb and flow depending on what your actual skill set and sport is. After your high intensity conditioning, now we're looking at zone 2 cardiac output. And honestly, this can be as often as you want. It can also help with recovery. As long as it is pain-free and you can recover for it and it's not going to put you in overtraining, by all means, knock out as much walking, hiking, whatever you want that's like a zone 2 cardiac output type of heart rate. If you're not familiar with that, look it up. There's plenty of stuff on zone 2 cardiac output. Easy number is to take 180 minus your age, and that should be the top end of your heart rate. Pretty simple. Next. So then at the end of it, we're going to recover to perform again. So our focus here is recovering with high quality sleep and stress environmental management. You may recognize that from previously when we talked about getting back in the fight. And again, low intensity movement can also be recovery. So you get that zone 2, that cardiac output, or if you just want to go for a walk, by all means, that's going to help with recovery. There are much more advanced recovery protocols, but initially, our main focus should be quality sleep and stress environmental management. If you're getting the high quality sleep, chances are everything else is going to kind of fall in line. There is no other anabolic that is more important than sleep. If you can get a good high quality sleep, you're going to do much better than somebody who's taken a bunch of anabolics or something like that. There's obviously some levels where if they're getting sleep and they're doing anabolics, obviously they're going to surpass you. But at the end of the day, if you want good hormone levels, if you want good health levels, if you want good performance, you've got to get high quality sleep. And not just hours of sitting in bed, it has to be the actual quality of the sleep. So that's kind of what we're looking at when it comes to the performance hierarchy. So just kind of review, we got moved to a position of dominance well and often, moving through that sequence. We're looking to fight aggressively. To get back in the fight, we're looking to lose the fat. So once we get here to performance, now we're looking at nutrition, competition, skill, volume of strength training, conditioning, etc., and then recover to perform again. If you have any questions, post them below. I look forward to having the conversation.